to another edition of Film Club, and today we're going to review the most recent CGI animated Resident Evil feature, Resident Evil Vendetta, which came out earlier this summer. I will start by saying I'm a fan of the CGI movies they have put out previously, which those two were Degeneration before it, and then Damnation, which came out a couple years ago. This is the new one, Vendetta, and it's kind of a sequel, but kind of also a reboot of these CGI movies, but it also stars Leon. However, Chris Redfield is more of the main protagonist of this film, along with Rebecca Chambers. So, I'm going to start out by saying I didn't care for this movie. I was very disappointed in it, and that's saying a lot considering I own both of these movies on Blu-ray, and I'm big fans of them. My problem with this whole movie is it just kind of seems like a regurgitated plot that we've already seen in other Resident Evil stories. This film opens with yet another mansion being infiltrated, not by STARS, because STARS isn't a thing anymore, but by the BSAA, led by Chris Redfield. How many mansions exist in this franchise at this point? Seriously, how many mansions have they infiltrated in this franchise at this point? From the games, from the movies, from the comics, from the books, it's ridiculous to me that here in 2017, another Resident Evil story is about infiltrating a mansion. At least that's how it starts. Now, there are some good things that I do like about this movie. I like that Rebecca Chambers is shown more adult and more grown up. You have to remember when her character was put out in the original Resident Evil and then in the remake in 2002, she was just 18 years old. She was just starting out. Here she's more grown up, she's more well defined, but my problem with her character in this movie is, well, yes, she starts out as a cool and interesting character in this film. They literally just turn her into another damsel in distress, and that's a problem I have with it. I didn't want that. Now, the plot of this movie is kind of ludicrous. It involves, and I'm not going to remember people's names, I apologize, it involves a kind of a gun runner type person who has the ability to basically use a zombie outbreak virus. This virus is called the A virus. He has the ability to turn this thing on and tell these zombies and the people, he's basically able to control zombies and to control people under this thing that he spread airborne without prior knowledge to anyone after the United States government bombed his wedding a couple years ago. Like, this whole thing is ludicrous to me, and I was pissed off from the beginning to the end as I watched it. Now, his whole purpose is he's pissed because everybody died, and this is a problem I have with this movie. This man was literally dead center in this attack that bombed the wedding that he was at. He literally stood next to his wife, who was blown apart, and all he has left of her is her arm. But the problem I have with that is, why was he not blown up? This bomb was literally dropped on top of him and everybody around him died, but he survived? That makes no sense. And not to mention that, he doesn't even have a scratch on him. He's literally walking around like he's fine, but everyone else got blown up. It just doesn't make any sense. And that was ridiculous to me. That was the first thing that took me out of this movie. We introduce Leon, although he's a very secondary character in this flick. He's not the primary protagonist like he was in Damnation or Degeneration. Chris Redfield is the main protagonist here, and he's basically trying to stop this gun runner. At the beginning, they infiltrate this mansion, shit goes haywire. This guy announces, that he has this virus and whatever, and he's basically getting revenge for the United States government killing his wife. That's the point. What this movie boils down to, and I think it's utterly preposterous, is that he kidnaps Rebecca Chambers because Rebecca Chambers looks like his dead wife, except she's a brunette and his dead wife is a blonde. So what is his idea to do? Oh, gee, I don't know. He's just going to restage the entire wedding from a couple years prior with her in the center of it, and his whole idea is he's going to take his dead wife's severed arm and he's going to attach it to Rebecca Chambers. That's how this film ends. He attaches it to her in an attempt to remarry his dead wife. It's ridiculous. Another thing that I had a problem with in this movie is it has some good fight scenes. Like, there's one scene in particular of Chris fending off a bunch of zombies that I thought was pretty cool, but then he has these CQC fights with the main antagonist of this flick, and the problem I have with them is they're shooting guns everywhere, and bullets are flying everywhere. Like, these bullets would be hitting somebody, man. Like, come on. I know they're on top of a rooftop at the end of this flick, but it's ridiculous. Overall, I did not like this movie, and I was very disappointed. As someone who's a fan of Resident Evil, as someone who actually likes the live action films, which you're probably looking at me like, that's ridiculous, because most people hate them. I enjoyed them. And as someone who has enjoyed the prior two entries in this film franchise, this flick is getting one thumb down. It is not great. Obviously, I really just didn't like it. I had a lot of problems with it. I had a lot of problems with the way they portrayed characters. I didn't like the fact that Chris Redfield and Leon Kennedy look different, but Rebecca Chambers kind of looks the same as her character from the games. So I don't understand why the visuals of this movie were just kind of off at times, and that was weird to me. It's very well made, I'll give it that. Like, the CGI looks good, but I don't understand why the visual representation of these characters was different than they are in the games. You know, I've stated many times, like, I hate the fact that in Resident Evil Revelations, they changed Jill Valentine's face after it had been the same for the entirety of this franchise. And they kind of do the same thing here with Chris Redfield, and I just don't understand what the purpose of that was. But in the last couple of years, we've seen, like, 3 different versions of what Chris Redfield looks like. I mean, look at him in Resident Evil 7. He don't look anything like he does in Resident Evil 5, or 6. So, that being said, one thumb down for this. It's not good. It's not worth your time. It's kind of preposterous. I didn't really care for it. And if you're a fan of Resident Evil, you have better outlets to experience this franchise. Hell, I'd tell you to go watch the live action movies, all 6 of them. I think they're pretty good popcorn flicks. They're not great movies, but they're enjoyable. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, till next time.